Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our virtual OPT Artist Talk series. My name is Megan, and I am the Marketing and Events Coordinator here at the Vernon Public Art Gallery. As a cultural institution, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that I'm located on unceded and ancestral territory of the Silex people. I would also like to thank Alternatives Funeral and Cremation Services for supporting the gallery and our artist talks. Tonight, I am very happy to introduce to you Guy Langevin. Sorry, I've been practicing my French, but it's going to be a little rough. Guy Langevin graduated from the Universite du Quebec in Trois-Riveres in 1977. He has exhibited his artwork in more than 60 solo exhibitions within Canada and internationally. He has participated in more than 400 group exhibitions throughout the world, including approximately 250 international biennials or juried exhibitions. His work presented in the Okanagan Print Triennial is part of his most recent body of work titled Paysage Ultime, sorry, I'm sure he'll say it better than me, which explores the idea that the human body could create a perfect landscape. Sorry, I'm just admitting. A bit of housekeeping before we begin. This talk will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you feel comfortable, please turn on your mic and camera at the end of the talk during our Q&A period to ask Guy a question. I will also be taking questions in the chat if you prefer that route. Without further ado, and just if everyone could turn off their mics and cameras during this so we can all have that good recording. And let's give a warm virtual welcome to Guy Langevin.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Vernon Public Arts Gallery for organizing those meetings, even if it's not on real, I can't touch everyone, but anyway, it's always interesting to see and to talk to the people. Thanks to Briar Craig too for having the idea of creating this biennial, and thanks to the Okanagan Printmaking Triennial for making this event. Even this year, I know personally how much work it could be to organize a biennial, and I cannot imagine how much work it could be, especially this year in those pandemic time. Talking about pandemic, this year has begun curiously for me on March 10, 2020. I was in Skopje in Macedonia for the opening of my show at the National Gallery, and at noon on March 10, the Macedonian government declared that there was no public reunion. So I was there in the middle of a gallery alone, and there was nothing except me and my work. So the year began like this to me. I came back here, and it was a very tough year for me. I lost my motivation and goals, and so even if I had plenty of time to work on my own work, I didn't make it. I made anything else that I was supposed to do. Talking about myself, or the preparation of just to prepare what you will see. I'm coming from I received my art education at the beginning of the 70s. So at this time, at least in Quebec, abstraction was the very, very, almost the very unique way to be modern or something like that. So I learned my profession. I learned to compose image with the idea of abstraction, the idea of opposing forces. So it rules my work all my life. Coming from the 70s too, photograph was taking a lot of place into actual art. And I was very curious about photographs, but I like to do the things that with my hand, to draw. I like to make things that made really by my hand. So I try to combine both of them. And what I like to do is trying to draw the invisible, catch the time, the movement, and this in the still image. In that, I used many ways to express my art throughout the time. As Megan says, that I came out of university in 77, so it's 44 years ago. So it's important to me to be able to express myself in many ways, in photographs, in drawings, in paintings, and all of those, even printmaking, are tools. Printmaking is not a finality, it's a tool. I want to express myself into printmaking, but I want to make art first. I don't want to make printmaking first. I want to make art first. As I said, I like to draw images, to make it by hand. And I learned throughout the time that, especially with drawing and photographs, those two things learned me something, taught me something. Drawing taught me how to compose the image, and photograph taught me how the light goes on the image. So after that, we're going to begin the show. I want to share my screen. Where is mine? It's here. That's it. So welcome to this Artist Talk. Right here. Life as light is fugitive. This is one of the things that rules my work for a long time. And there is few sentences like this that I loved into my work, and this one is one of it. It's a curious sign. This spiral is the way I figure the artistic life. The artistic career is not for me a straight line. It's a spiral. I began at the external of it and goes through the year up to the center. I don't know now where I am into that. I hope I'm closer to the center than 40 years ago. But anyway, so to explain the beginning, the genesis of the ultimate landscape work, I come back a few years sooner. As you can see in this image, I work with the human body. I always work with the human body. And building an image, for me, is always a struggle at many levels. A struggle between modernity and tradition, between light and shadow, precision and haziness, external image and internal feeling. For me, human body is the very best way to speak to humans about humans. It allows the viewer to identify himself, to take the place of the model, to create his own relation and invent his own history. I had to, yeah, okay. However, the body on the image must be simplified, metamorphosed, reshaped to enter more directly in relation with the viewer. It should not be identifiable. Sorry for my English too. No, I'm not really sorry, but it's a curious way to pronounce sometimes. The represent of the human body is more efficient in its communication when it's simplified. In this series of work, this series of work was about memory. It conducts every viewer to the interpretation of the image itself, following the only clue given by the very first step into the image, a human presence. This presence is almost touchable, like a flavor, not like a smell, but like a flavor. This series was called Scent of Memory. It was taking the viewer into his own souvenir, his own interpretation based on his own experience. This is, I told you, I was having more than one way of expression. This is the final step of the work on a memory. It's an installation work based on human trace of light, in fact. And it was like all those large images was based on how do you call it, stained glasses in churches and with candles. So it creates a false room for not for prayer, but for getting inside. And the title was Profound Icons. The next few images are getting further into deforming the human body. As you can see here, there is almost no recognizable part of it, but you can feel the body anyway. This series of work is called Fallen Angels. And it's based on the idea of losing our values, human values. I took the image of the little angel that when I was young, and at the school, they glued some stamp of angels in our books to congratulate us or to make and we have God and angels so I took the idea of losing our values was like not believing anymore into into the angels. And there's a little short text. Look at the angels' falls, the twilight, their decrepitude. During the fall, angels take shape, their body takes shape, twist, deform, cry painfully. They will hurt the soul. They will hurt themselves, but they won't die. It should be too easy. They will stay alive. Many of them are probably already between us, living as humans. Shadows is their new permanent companion. They entangle into it. They ravel into it. They lost themselves into it like a misfitting cloth. They were light. They are now stuck into the coat of darkness, too heavy, too wide. They have fight shadow. They cannot loosen it now. They wear it like a human wear their own darkness, their inside drama, their stain of original sin. I'm taking elements of social environment as religion or social observation and introduce them to the feeling image I can make. So at the end of, as usual, I most of the time I begin with many drawings and prints. And then at the end, I make a large installation of photographic works, and for that series of work, it was the same. So you can see two of those pieces, Falling Angel, which is the English title, and Le Crépuscule des Anges, which is the title in French. In fact, there was many, where is my, there was few pieces of that installation. The only one was, there was only one work called Fallen Angels. It was my title when I was, my beginning title, but when I translated in French, it was not good. So I decided to take the Crépuscule des Anges, which is direct reference to Wagner opera, the Crépuscule des Dieux. And all the other works have the title, the Crépuscule des Anges, translated in many languages. There's one thing that I also do in my work is changing the way of the work to create new meaning. In French, we say, changer le sens, change le sens. The word sens is the same for way and meaning. So I like to play with words. So it was one of the things, and it's a part of that of the thing that brings me to the ultimate landscape. You can see here. Ooh, where is my? You can see those are very small plates, 2 inches by 2 inches, and the whole group. You can turn it on. It could be a losange like this, or a square, and if it's a square, the work inside our losange. And so you can play with all of them individually or in group. And that's a thing that I really enjoy. A few years ago, Director Michael Besant invited me and other artists to create works for an exhibition in Poland. We had to create a large installation work on textile. So it was a very nice challenge, and it pushed me a little further into my work. So I had to work quite a little. So I took an old idea that I had of recreating a body, oversizing it. This exhibition was very nice. In fact, I think that on the triennial this year, there is 6 Canadian artists, and 4 of them were in that show. Derek Michael, Mark Bove, Sean Caulfield, and me. And there was other very, very beautiful Canadian artists too. What like at the end, it gave me a large installation work based on the human body, and I called it voile de peau. In fact, I was thinking about this for a long time, but the material that I had was not good for that. And at that time, the timing was pretty good. And I made those large photo installation work that recreate the body, one body. And it can be seen from far, and it can be seen from near, and it can be seen through the works itself. So that was very amazing, and it's still one of the things that I'm still working on. See the view of another view of this installation work, and usually I begin with print and drawings, and then I make a photo installation. For that series of work, I made the inverse. I began with the photo installation. So for the work, for the exhibition itself, I wanted to do some prints. So I took the same pattern, recreating a body by parts, except that not oversizing it. I took the decision to make it on one-on-one scale. This is an abstract of document. So you can see the work from near, from close, and from far away, so you see precision of the work. So it's about skin. This exhibition is about skin. In fact, I want to show skin because I found that our society is becoming a little too, we're becoming a society of preachers, a society of inquisitors. We cannot show a piece of skin. We cannot tell some words. We cannot talk about, show something that is related to sexual theme, even if it's respectful. So I wanted to show how deep, how versatile is the skin. And the skin, and I had a small text with that. The skin doesn't pronounce a single word, but say so many things. It is perhaps the most represented image in art without being named. Without skin, each portrait would be just one more écorché, without identity. However, when we show it close, it loses precisely this quality of identification. Nudity is also confront us with convenience and social barriers. It is a sign of freedom that many fear, that they want to restrict, control, even abolish. So I made prints starting from the same idea of reconstruction of human body. It works, but I wasn't really satisfied, and I didn't know exactly why. That's a friend of mine, Michel Barzin from Belgium, came to my exhibition and told me, your prints are probably the best print you have ever done, but the way you present them is not good. I was a little shocked, but I looked at it, and he was right, in fact. Showing the prints like this, when I was making each of them, I was looking at each of them, and they were appearing very abstract. There was something more deep into each of them. And when I followed my first idea and present them like the installation work, it was nice but flat. I found it there was not many layers, not enough deepness into that. So I took them, I reprinted them on separated papers. Already, I found there was something more interesting into the abstraction into that. But I've made what I've done before, turning them and playing with them. And those are the same, those are the three works that we have there. And when I have seen the big one here, it lost almost all the human representation and become something else. And that really touched me, and that really interested me. In fact, the tones of gray were very, very interesting, much more interesting into that. So I decided to create some other work just to look, of course, if it could work. So I began this body of work. Those are the two first one are the two prints that are in the OPT show. Aube 1 and Aube 2. Aube is dawn. It's for me, I play with the perception of the image, and that's what it interested me. I propose something to the viewer and let him decide what he or she will see, discover, read, and understand. I never try to answer any question. I prefer to bring the viewer in face of himself and in face of his own interrogation, make his own introspection. I propose something that is not, you cannot recognize someone, you can almost not recognize the human body. So this is Aube 2. I like to cheat our brain and force the double sense. I like the fact that something that you see isn't there, and something that you don't see is there. So the ultimate landscape may show a ground that I didn't draw because there is nothing. A sky that is not sky at all. A time, a space, early morning, late evening, when the light is almost René Magritte's light. In French, we call it entre chien et loup, a kind of twilight. And so I'm still into that body of work. So it's quite hard for me to develop into that, but it's really what I'm still discovering what I'm doing. I made the choice to taking the human form as the light instead of the ground. It gives a kind of northern light and space that we read as the sky. It also makes the human form almost invisible until we recognize it. Then we just see the human and not so much the landscape. There's a little trick that you can see here, my four first work of that series of work. And I like to play, it's a game, but if you take all of them, then you can reshape them. In fact, you take O1 and O2, and you take O3 and O4 and put them together, you will have this. So it's the same image cut and used differently. But that's the way I like to do it. I don't sometimes, not all the time. In those work, and there's another part of that series, which called Aux Aurores, and other titles anyway. It's just parts of human and seen from closer. It's still on one-on-one scale, and it's very interesting. One-on-one, it's not so big, so it gives a very, very nice impression of for me, the word mezzotint in those work, the word mezzotint reaches complete sense. We travel to the shade of gray. We cannot imagine. We can imagine almost what we want we want into those shade. They are really skin shade. They are sky shade, kind of fume, smoke into the dark. Those are this is O5 is probably the most representative that what I wanted to do, less dark, but you can see all the shade of gray, and what was interesting to me is this kind of landscape is exactly the kind of landscape of when I was young. Not now in Trois-Riveres, there is no mountain, but I raised up in Chicoutimi, where there is some mountains around hills like this, and you can see some this one is made for a show in France next year, and it's about duality. In fact, the title is Par les fenêtres, through the windows, and we don't know if we see the landscape from the inside or the human body from the outside. In fact, the word duality is perhaps the most appropriate to describe the basis of my work. It's expressed in the human duality of human is fight for life, is penchant for death. My search is essentially emotional, based on the relationship between self and self, self and the others, the barriers of our society and the human values. In all the forms that I work, I try to make it possible for the viewer to read it, to interpret it, to understand it in relation of himself, to create a relation, an emotion in the mind of the spectator and is in his whole body. So, duality between abstraction and realism, between light and shadow, between white and black, between life and death, between description and evocation, between time and space, between ideas and images, between memory and oblivion. All those dualities are always the two sides of the same medal and pushed me into the evocation of the human being. The duality is, in fact, what pushed me to try, if I can, to realize a tangible image of an invisible and untouchable thing, humanity. What is that, in fact? Cotton cloth with ink, cotton fibers, starch, and ink. It's exactly what we have on a print. If the order is different, but it's the same thing. And that's what I like to think about when I work. It's always alive. What is important is not the ink, it's not the paper, it's not the technique, it's what we can make as emotion for the viewer in front of us. I've seen that yesterday. L'art, c'est le plus court chemin de l'homme à l'homme. André Malraux. André Malraux was a writer and politician, a French politician. Art is the shortest way from man to man. So that's the end of this.
Thank you so much, Guy. That was awesome. Oh, that was wonderful. So if anyone wants to turn on their mic and their camera and speak, ask a question, say anything, feel free. Now is your time, you guys.
Oops. I have a question, if that's okay.
Okay.
The earlier work, The Falling Angels, obviously movement was, or the impression of movement was a huge part of the work, but the later work, the most recent work, is much more still.
Yeah.
Was that a difficult transition to make? Because it seemed like movement fully infiltrated your work for a long time, and then all of a sudden it doesn't.
No, it wasn't very difficult to make as a transition. No, in fact, I worked on the movement and on blurry bodies for years, for almost 20 years. And when I started the photograph for the installation, I knew that I had to do something precise, not very, very almost precise. There is no, not so much detail, at least in the prints, but the surface the texture has to be very smooth, and the image has to be very clean. It was just a natural move. It has not been. If I had shown some work for the older than the memory series, I was working very precisely 30 years ago, and as someone told me once, I wanted to know if I can draw again. No, that's it. But it's, in fact, I needed that. I think it was necessary for me to make it very precise. So it wasn't a very difficult transition.
Thank you.
Awesome. And does anyone else want to say anything or have a question or anything, you guys?
It's not a question, but as a former student of Guy, I think it's really nice seeing his work, because in class he would never really show anything. So now I understand much better his teachings. Taking a step back, it really means a lot to me, just being here and listening to what he had to say about his work, because I feel it gives a lot more depth to what he would teach in class now, that I can see what he does like in his personal artistic life. I want to say thank you for sharing it.
My pleasure. It has been a pleasure to teach you.
Well, that was very nice. Aw. Well, I'll just say thanks again, Guy. Thanks for joining us and taking the time out of your night. And I know it's 10 o'clock there, now closer to 11. So thank you so much for joining us.
I have to finish my glass.
Yeah, exactly. Let's all have a glass of wine now and wind down for our Tuesday night. Yeah, so thanks for coming, everyone. And if anyone else wants to say goodbye, feel free right now. Thank you. Oh, we have a message from Bruce. Thanks for doing such a great job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.